Good morning. Good to see you this morning. Dressed a little different. So this morning we're having our mission trip presentation from our trip to Erie, Pennsylvania last July. And we're excited to be presenting that trip to you this morning. Just a few announcements as we get started. Our membership class, our 101 class, Introductory to the Church, will be downstairs in the teacher lounge, which is next to the school library downstairs. And then we do have our Feed the Need emphasis that's continuing. If you have not been able to sign up for that, you can do that through our email update every week that goes out. There's a link there. And next week we'll have somebody here on hand to kind of help you through that physically if you need help with that. And then lastly, our time to get our air conditioners out. There's a number of air conditioners in the Learning Center office areas that need to be taken out. We're going to try to do that this coming Thursday at 6:30. Any able-bodied fellas especially who are able to pull that off, just let me know that we need 4 or 5 guys to be able to do that. Please stand if you're able for our prayer reinforcing why we've come today. Join me. God, I've come today to lift my heart and voice to bless you, to meet with you, and to be blessed by you. Thank you for being here to meet with me. 1 John 4:16 says, and so we know and rely on, we rely on the love God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God and God in them. In a minute, Sam's going to introduce our group and the whole program, but I just want to thank you for your prayers during that time especially. And for those of you who were able to support it financially, we appreciate your involvement in that trip too. It's not only those who went, but your involvement through your prayers and through your giving as well, so thank you for that.
Well, good morning, everyone. We're so glad that you're here this morning. And as Pastor Ron said, we really do appreciate your prayers. They meant a whole lot, and we're really excited to have the opportunity to share about our experience here in Erie, Pennsylvania, and the church that we got to work with, the Cross. And so we hope this can be a really great time of celebration, and also getting you guys thinking and reflecting upon what service looks like in our daily lives as well. So to begin, I'm going to introduce our team that went to Erie, Pennsylvania from Abundant Life Church. So I'm going to not follow the picture. I'm going to follow more of the people who are on the stage. So I'm going to start with the back row. So we have Barry. Here's Barry. We have Anne Marie, Teresa, Lisa, and then Pastor Ron. Then we have Tom, Marty, and then Diane, then myself. My name is Sam, by the way, if you did not know. And so we left on Sunday, July 24th in the morning, and then we were there till Friday, July 29th, and we got back in the evening. So it was about a 5-day trip, 6-day trip overall. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce a little bit about the Cross and what they do and their work there, and also the people who are involved there as well. So that's the picture on the left. That's a picture of the head pastor. His name is Chuck Nelson. He is married to his wife Betsy, and they have 2 daughters. One is named Lydia, and the other is Sophia. It was really cool. Lydia is like a teenager. She's, I think, going into 8th grade, or she is in 8th grade now. And she was very involved in helping us out, which was really cool during our time there. And the church there does amazing things. And this is a little description of what they do on their website. I believe also, I think this was like the mission This is like a little bit of the description of the mission experience that you would get potentially if you went on this trip. So this is a little bit of a description on their website. So as a church, we strategically chose to plant ourselves in the middle of Erie, Pennsylvania, where the median household income is less than $11,000 per year. This is one of the poorest zip codes in the nation. And poverty is the breeding ground for addiction and brokenness. So we aim to help seek and save the lost by meeting the ongoing needs of residents with love and grace. And by the end of these mission trips, attendees will be trained in societal issues and evangelism by engaging in service projects and other opportunities where we are able to build relationships. This trip will be fun, but also challenging, with an emphasis on how to grow in our personal walks with God and serve together as the body of Christ. We offer mission experiences to church youth and multi-generational groups during the summer, as well as spring break options for college student ministries and young adults. And the experience that we had over this around a week or so with them, I can tell you that what this says on their website is very true. They are right in the middle of serving those who are going through a lot in their lives. This isn't just something they have on their website. And it's really amazing to see the connections that they made in the community that are helping people with a lot of different brokennesses, and how they use these opportunities to take care of their physical needs, their mental needs, their social needs, all of these needs, so they can really address like the spiritual needs that we really all have. And so now this is a picture of some of the people that we got to kind of interact with and got to meet at the cross. So we see there on the right, there's Chuck Nelson again. Then next to him is Adam. And Adam is like the worship leader kind of / pastoral intern and at the cross, and he actually is pursuing a degree at Gordon Conwell online. I promised Chuck that I would try that I wouldn't convince him to move to Massachusetts to pursue that degree in person. And then Donnie is next to Adam. Donnie is a really friendly guy, a member of that church, very involved. He was really awesome guy. And then there's Katie as well. She's a very involved member at that church, and she actually works at one of the organizations that we'll be talking about a little bit later that we got to work with during our time there. And then there's Irene as well, and she, again, was really great, and she was helping us out throughout our times when we went off to our different service days. And then on the bottom to the right is Mackenzie, and then there's Lydia, Chuck's daughter, and then Hannah, who is Adam's wife, and that's their dog. I forget their dog's name, honestly. Was it Sam? Interesting. I did not know that. But that's a little bit about who we worked with and a little bit about us as well and what their mission's all about. Now we'll go over to Tom.
I guess we'll stand.
It's up to you. You don't have. You can sit.
Stay
Yeah,
seated?
you can
Okay.
stay seated if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the facility that we were at. This is the St. Paul's United Church of Christ. They're looking for a possibility of combining ministries since St. Paul just has a handful of attendees. Just a little background, the church was built in 1851. No air conditioning, but that was okay. We were good with that. And so it was built by German immigrants back then. So it was a high German, Polish population in that area of the country. Next we had Fellowship Hall. This is where we ate our meals and packed lunches for the day. Upstairs is a room they call the upper room where the homeless can go during the day to get out of the elements. It has a separate outside entrance that is completely secure from the rest of the building. And we did, I remember the first night we were there, we actually did eat with some homeless people. They're welcome to join. I think it's around 5 o'clock or so they kind of open the doors and people are welcome to eat there if they like. So that was a lot of fun. And we also kind of got some of our assignments, what we were going to do the next day. They kind of grouped us in the different ministries that we'll be getting into, just to kind of decide who's going to go with who and which vehicle. And the lunches were great. We had a lot of chips and crackers, and I think I just finished the last of it the other day. But and it was a lot of fun. So next, Anne Marie.
Okay, so one of the organizations we worked with was EUMA. And their mission is rooted in God's love and care. EUMA provides life-changing opportunities for those who live at the margins of homelessness to become vital members of our community. So specifically, their mission is carried out through the following programs, and they actually have, it's impressive the amount of programs that they do. The Refuge, which is a 32-bed emergency shelter for homeless families with children. There is the Refuge, a 32-bed I said that already, sorry. The Liberty House, a 10-bed transitional shelter and program for homeless veteran men. 255 adults, children, and veterans were safely sheltered and cared for by the Refuge and Liberty House. 90% of the veterans and 60% of the families transitioned to permanent housing after staying at these shelters. And I'm going to give this to Teresa to continue with that.
They also have a few more ministries, which includes Our Neighbor's Place, which is a seasonal shelter, a community effort to provide a safe and warm overnight shelter to men and women who are homeless and have nowhere to go during Erie's winter season storms. 2,887 beds were provided to 187 homeless men and women during Erie's winter season through Our Neighbor's Place overflow shelter. They also offer rapid rehousing, which is helping those in need in a housing crisis quickly to find a home and provide supportive services to keep them there. They offer permanent housing, offering low-income permanent housing to units of formerly homeless families, youth, and others. They have the Rainbow Connection, which is a thrift store, and they provide financial support to EUMA programs and offering free clothing and housing items to homeless individuals and those in need through a voucher program. 1,784 adults and children from 26 local agencies received free clothing and household items at the Rainbow Connection store. They also have a program called Journey Home, and that is where they offer a bridge from foster care to independent living for those who turn 18 and are no longer able to be in the foster care program. Last year alone, more than 3,000 adults and children were held by EUMA. Were able to work with this organization, and it was such a blessing. I was really impressed that their focus wasn't just on short-term fixes, but really long-term support for their clients and in the community. That's also where I learned how to stay in a deck, and I think I'm like a licensed professional now, so if you need help, let me know.
Well, each day, our group of 9, we were divided into 3 different work units, and would go into different cars. We did have a van that Marty drove, but then people from their church drove the rest of us, to different places. They were hands-on. Anyone who belonged in their congregation were there for us. They, in some form or fashion. It was pretty amazing. On this day, our group included from the right, Mackenzie and Arena, they're from the Cross, from the church itself, myself, Tom, Katie from the Cross, and Teresa. Mackenzie and Katie also work with the EUMA. Okay, and the next slide here is this day, Tom and I and Patty, who is one of the, I forget her title, the director of the outreach type thing for us. Excuse me. And we cleaned out this storage shelter. It looks really good when you see the second picture, but if you look at the one on the right, we took everything out of that. Actually, I was signed up to be the inventory person, and I went, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to write stuff down. Everyone else is doing work. Let me tell you, I worked my butt off. I can't tell you how many hot coffee cups and masks and hand sanitizers and et cetera, there were. So I had to estimate this as we went along. So Tom, used his mighty strong back. I was so grateful for that. Patty was there, and also Adam. Adam showed up they would drive around checking on everyone, and he saw what an awesome task we had to do, and he jumped in as well. But this stuff here that we were moving was from our neighbor's place, a seasonal shelter. And what struck me was that this seasonal shelter was hosted by like 5 different churches in the community, and they moved it every 2 weeks. So, it's like there are a lot of churches in Erie, and when you look down, you can say, oh, that's our church. No, that's not. There's another church. Lots of churches all around. But 5 different churches would take this stuff and move it every 2 weeks and set up. That way, no one had the responsibility for a shelter all winter long, but every 5 weeks, for 2 weeks at a time. Okay, that's good. Lisa?
So on day 1, myself and Barry, you can see Barry in the picture there, and Diane and Christy, who was a member of the Cross, we served at Mercy Center for Women. And I was really excited to start off there because of our ministry with the Pregnancy Care Center. This is a similar kind of situation, but very different too, but along those lines. Mercy Center is a former convent. There's Mercy Center, a convent. There was a school, which I'll talk to you about in a little bit, and then there's a church. So at the Mercy Center, they offer safe and supportive transitional housing up to about a year, educational and counseling for homeless women with or without children. There are connections with social service agencies and volunteers to form a network of ongoing support, mentoring, and education to our residents and women in the community, to their residents. And it's an environment based on spirituality and ethical values. And the residents take a very active part. They don't just live there. They're there to transition them to more permanent housing. So they're learning how to take care of their apartment. They're doing house duties, just like if you were a part of a family and everybody chips in. Because the goal is, after that year, they might move along to another more permanent place, but then eventually to get them out on their own. And I love that. It's not just, here you go. It's, we're going to help you, but we're going to give you the tools to move you along. And it made me think so much of my father's house, a ministry our church was involved with for years before it closed its doors back in early, I believe it was 2020. So on the next slide, this is when we were at the middle building, which was the former school. And it is now being transformed at or into the Mercy Anchor Community Center. And let me just talk a little bit about that before I talk about the photos. In 2017, the leaders of the Mercy Center for Women began imagining what would it take to completely renovate a former school building into affordable, beautiful apartments that would also become the anchor of the surrounding community. What if our Mercy Center women and children, after residing in the transitional housing for 1 year, could live in these apartments on their own, but still have access to services? The Mercy Anchor Community Center is scheduled to be open next month, so it's very exciting. And let me tell you, it is amazing. The apartments are beautiful. They really want their residents to feel special and respected. It's not, here's our leftovers. It's, here's our best. And they were beautiful. So there's 13 two-bedroom apartments, and again, this is also transitional. This might be up to 2 years, and then the hope is they will be in their own apartment and eventually be able to afford their own house. And some of the amenities they provide, which was so impressive to me, a gym, an exercise room, technology hub, a library, a thrift store, a food pantry. Residents can get their GED, community gardens. Those are just some of the amenities that are offered there. It's nicer than probably most apartments that any of us have ever lived in. So let me just talk about the photos. On the one on the left, I hope it's the left. Yes, it is the left. I'm like, are we mirroring or what here? You can see in the very back is Mike. Mike was our guy for the day. He's, I believe his title's like head of building and maintenance, and he was great to work with because he knew the lay of the land and what absolutely needed to be done. And again, he dug in with us the whole day, which was great. And then there's Barry, Christy again from the Cross, the church, myself, and Diane. And right now, we're in one of the meeting rooms. They have a couple of meeting rooms where, again, literally, they'll hold meetings when there's outside organizations that are supporting the ministry or meetings for the residents. And then in the middle photo, you're going to see us unloading these big, awkward, crazy-looking tables and taking them up the stairs and into that meeting room. And we had to use some geometry to figure out how to get the angles in, but we managed to do it. And again, I'm assuming these supplies, these tables, desks, whatever, they were most likely donated from former office buildings that were no longer using them. So that's Mike and Barry and Diane there. And then in the last picture, that's me doing something I love, gardening. We got to go out to these beautiful gardens, and they were quite overgrown and kind of a mess, and they want them to be beautiful again. So we were doing weeding and pruning and all kinds of stuff. We almost got them done, not quite, but we were really happy to be able to serve there on day one.
Next slide is myself, Lisa, and Sam working with Patty, who's the Director of Mission Engagement for EUMA. On the far right, to the left of me is Gary, the Facilities Manager for all of the EUMA properties, and next to him, Grant, a paid maintenance person. And we're at the Journey Home that provides housing for teens who have turned 18 and no longer able to be in foster care. And you really don't think about that. You think somebody's in the foster care system, that's awesome. But what happens when they turn 18? They're out. They're out of the foster care system, and what happens to them? So this Journey Home is great because it provides opportunity for them to continue to transition, to get a job, to be self-sufficient. We weeded the front and stained all 3 ground floor porches. And part of the blessing of the trip was working alongside staff and volunteers and hearing about their life story, their faith journey. And everyone we worked with had a great passion for God and a real heart for those who are struggling. Marty, Sam, and others did a lot of work on the inside of this property.
This next slide, I'd like to introduce you to Sam and Marty's house cleaning services. These are pictures of Sam and I doing final cleanup of an apartment for a new resident assistant due to move in the next day. We worked with UMA Director Patty and Facilities Manager Gary on the project. It included swapping out a gas stove, cleaning the cabinets, the floors, the fridge, and the bathroom. It was a pleasure serving with and getting to know both Patty and Gary. And we'll be starting our business Monday morning if anyone...
Yes, feel free to call me. And then if you could go back to the slide previously really quickly. Thank you, awesome. I just want to mention a little bit about Gary, because as Pastor Ron mentioned, it was really cool. When we were staying the decks that day, we all kind of like, Lisa, Pastor Ron, and I, we all like split up with people who worked there. So I was partnered with Gary staying this deck, and he, really, really cool guy. And one of the reasons why I wanted to mention him and his story a little bit is he got pretty vulnerable with me, and I don't want to share like all the details, but one of the things he shared with me is that previously he worked for this faith-based organization before working at EUMA. And he really did not feel very appreciated there. And it was a really hard time for him. And one of the things he told me throughout our time working together is that he has felt nothing but feeling welcome and feeling very appreciated at EUMA, which is really cool. And if you met Patty, the director, you would see why he felt so welcome. She was so welcoming to us, and she was so encouraging to us. But I think his story really reminds me of the importance of really being appreciative of the people you're working with. I think sometimes in ministry it can be really tempting to be like, oh, I'm just going to focus on the people we're trying to reach. and serve, which is great, but we also have to really be encouraging to the people we're working with. And I think EUMA does such an amazing job at that. And then the next slide is, so that's Teresa growing and staining a deck and learning that skill. And then there's Tom as well, staining that. I think that's the front porch deck of the refuge. And that was one of their kind of like temporary housings at EUMA.
EUMA stands for the Erie United Methodist Alliance. So it was a Methodist organization we're working with. We're being very ecumenical in our trip. You hear about another organization coming up shortly that also was United Methodist based. We typically finished working at the various sites about 3 in the afternoon, and then there was a time to go home to the hotel. Felt like home, being out all day, working hard. We regrouped about 4:30 for a debriefing, and then had supper every night at 5. And afterwards, there was an activity each evening. And one activity was at the Presque State Park. This state park we only went to the beach there, but it has a few lighthouses, bike paths, hiking, canoe and boat rentals, bird watching, 13 different beaches on this isle that's along Lake Erie in the bay. At the beach, we had pizza and beverages. Some had a catch with a football, others played some volleyball. It was so relaxing, just sitting on the beach, watching the sunset. They say they have some of the most beautiful sunsets in the continental United States. They also say it's probably because of the smog that comes in from Cleveland, Ohio. A little before sunset, their worship leader, Adam, led us in some worship with guitar, and then Katie, who's on staff at EUMA and works at the church as well, led us in a devotion. The weather was awesome that night, and it was a wonderful evening. And Marty and Tom are going to share now about All God's Children's Ministries, which is another Methodist-based organization.
Yes, All God's Children is a ministry that provides services to people with disabilities in the Pennsylvania, Erie, and Meadville area. So most people needing a ramp due to disability need to either buy one ramp or rent one monthly. So volunteers in Erie have built over 700 wooden ramps to date, completely free to the person in need. Supporters give their time, energy, gifts of money, and hearts to make this happen. Charlie is the person, you'll see in a second, who we worked with representing the organization. And Charlie was mentioning to me that there's a church in Long Island that donates all the supplies. And he said, you get the volunteers, we'll give you the supplies. So that worked out very well. And one of the things we were doing, we did a lot of inspections, did staining, and in some cases pruning. They get some, plants overgrowing in there and so forth. So we did a lot of that in several homes. Here are 2 crews working on ramps on different days. The wooden ramps need fresh waterproofing periodically, so we were able to do that to about 8 ramps. Some were straight shots and some were long and winding because the building code requires there be an 8 to 10 inches of ramp for every inch of the drop. So every turn, there must be a 5-foot landing. The residents were all very appreciative. The gray strip down the center is a special paint with some sand in it to provide some special traction for the residents as they wheel themselves up and down the ramp. Marty's going to share a little bit.
Here we go. Cool. These are pictures of Irina from the Cross Church, Diane, Tom, and I. We were working with Charlie from the All God's Children Ministry. Our project was to reseal Mr. James Lagone's ramp. While we were working on his ramp, James came to the doorway to see how we were doing. After some chit-chat with Tom and I, he asked us, would you like to listen to me play some music on my instrument? And we were like, sure, what do you play? He says, the sax. We're like, whoa, that'd be awesome, and encouraged him to come out and do so. He joyfully entertained us for a couple of hours with a mix of jazz, Latin, and gospel music. We all really enjoyed listening to him play and getting to know him as well. Surprise, no, let's see. Let's watch, let's see. No, sorry. Surprised by what was happening, Charlie, the director there, decided to call Pastor Chuck of the Cross Church and let him know of the great time we were having. And the next thing we know, Chuck showed up and said the local media wanted to come down and do a story on the ministry. I didn't want to blow this with the, let's watch a video of this story.
A special serenade that had a group of volunteers saying thank you. They were repairing a wheelchair ramp on the city's east side this week when the homeowner decided to give them a treat. Our Kara Coleman has the story.
Most mornings when the weather cooperates, James Liggins and his beloved saxophone can be found here. On his East 8th Street porch, serenading the city before most people get up and moving. Liggins is 82 years old, and most of his life has been centered around music.
I was a kid, like about 10 or so, and my brothers and sisters, we would sing around Pittsburgh, just gospel.
Liggins is confined to a wheelchair, so when a crew of volunteers showed up earlier this week to make repairs to his ramp, he decided to do what he does best.
This is phenomenal. This is gold.
Charlie Stalick runs the faith-based nonprofit that builds and maintains these ramps.
In the last 12 years, we've built about 700 of them.
And says Liggins' saxophone solo was music to their ears.
He played for an extra 2 hours that day just for our people. So while they were taking care of the ramp, he just sat there and played. He played a couple of jazz standards. He played some Latin. He played some gospel. His words were, you know, you guys are giving me a gift. I get to give you one back.
But for Liggins, it wasn't completely selfless.
I had a captive audience. This is that, the idea is I like playing for myself. I like to hear what I play, and I'd like to figure out how I can change it around differently. And hey, I'm 82, I'm gonna be dead and gone, and I wanna be remembered in some kind of ways.
A special serenade that made this work stop worth remembering.
You could tell that our people were touched. You could tell the volunteers were experiencing a treat.
Kara Coleman, Erie News Now.
All God's Children Ministry is certainly a blessing to the disabled of Erie, Pennsylvania. And by the way, I think James enjoyed us being his audience as much as we enjoyed listening to him. He was one of the highlights of the trip.
Just a little note on that. Charlie, who works for All God's Children's Ministries, he and Barry had a neat connection. It's like they were brothers from a different mother kind of thing. So.
I just want to mention one thing. This was one of the highlights of my summer, I think, having this. And Marty actually, you gave Marty a tour of the house, special. But I actually shared this clip on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I had a lot of awesome conversations with people. People were very interested in this. I was even at work, and I was in meetings, and people were asking me about it, with vice presidents and everything. It was unbelievable. And it was a really good opportunity to share. They get to see the video, and it brings up a lot of questions. Even people who aren't necessarily believers, who are really interested in serving, or even in situations where people say, "Hey, what'd you do for vacation?" It's like, "Well, let me tell you." And people are very inspired a lot of times. You'd be surprised to see things like this. So I think we were blessed to have this put in the media like this. And I think a part of it was not to take up too much time, but Chuck is in the city council, and he's also a pastor, so he has a lot of connections. He's in the media constantly. If you look him up on YouTube, he's getting interviewed all the time. So that was helpful in making our connections with the ministries as well. Next is Barry.
Hi, my name's Barry. This is my wife Annie, and we're going to talk to you about the Bicentennial Tower. So basically, the typical thing, as Pastor mentioned earlier, is we'd finish our work, we'd head back to our hotel rooms, clean up, rest for a bit, and then we'd come by for dinner, and then we would join each other in some sort of pleasant event. And at this time, we're visiting the Bicentennial Tower. So one night after supper, we went to the Bicentennial Tower. It is an observational tower that was built to highlight Erie's bicentennial in 1996.
It is 187 feet tall, and you can get a view of downtown Erie, Presque State Park, and even a glimpse of Canada from the upper observation deck. On the inside of the upper portion of the tower, they do have these little posters of the different Great Lakes, and just a little bit of history of like shipwrecks and different things. It was actually kind of interesting.
The next organization we worked with was Bayfront East Side Task Force, as they call it, BEST. It functions in various community development arenas, focusing primarily on housing and projects to improve the community. They have new home construction and a new home construction program to attract potential homeowners in the East Bayfront area. Since 2004, they have awarded grants totaling $500,000 to first-time homeowners, working with local banks who have invested more than $1.6 million in mortgage loans on these homes. To date, BEST has built over 20 new homes for first-time home buyers. They also have affordable rental housing, developing good quality affordable rental housing is part of BEST's mission to improve the neighborhood housing options. Wish we had something like that around here. Currently, BEST owns 13 buildings with over 20 units of affordable rental housing, with units ranging from one-bedroom options to single-family units. Barry and Anne Marie moved construction debris at one of these places as they were trying to get things ready. Yes, yeah, lots of hard work. They do home repair and facade funding in an effort to help beautify the Bayfront BEST area. BEST also created this grant initiative to supply homeowners with the neighborhood with matching grant funding to improve their housing. When things look better in the community, people take better care of it. So, especially some of these homes are older homes with all the dental work and stuff on it. That takes a lot of work to take care of. If you can have some money to fix that up, it really makes you feel better when you walk down the street. The people who live in there might be lovely and whatever, but $20,000, $30,000 to take care of the front of your home is a lot of dough for people to put out. So I think that's an awesome thing that they're doing. Then they do acquisition and demolition of blighted properties. So when a property is too bad to be repaired, they'll take it down. They set aside funds each year to acquire and demolish abandoned and blighted properties. The vacant lots are then used for public green space, where they provide maintenance and upkeep of the property. To date, BEST and its partners have removed and required over 45 blighted properties from the neighborhood. I'll talk about that in a second, too, with our pictures. Community building events. BEST also brings Bayfront residents together by hosting quarterly community meetings in an effort to increase neighborhood togetherness. If you know your neighbors, it's, you want to take care of them. So you want to do better. You want to make sure that your property looks good so that they feel good about you and you feel good about them. Okay, so this was one of the properties that had a blighted, I think there were 3 buildings there that they tore down. They left behind garages, and the garages were filled with all kinds of stuff that there was one of the gentlemen who volunteered with us had heavy equipment in it. So we did weeding and edging, and this was an orchard. They actually had planted fruit trees. We did edging. We had to dig out. They said someone came and told them these trees need us to dig out an area as wide around as the top of the tree. The top of the tree, the bottom of the tree needs to have no grass or anything around it. So we were over there with these little tools, trying to dig up all this old sod, and pretty impossible. Tom says, it would really be awesome if we had a bobcat. And what's his name? Robert. He's a tenant of one of the properties and volunteer. He says, "Oh, I got one of those." He goes over to the garage and opens it up and comes out with this, this little bobcat, and starts, helps dig up and helps move mulch, and it was a God ask. Thank you, Tom. That was awesome. So we had to weed everything underneath it, so you still needed to get down. And so I'm down in the dirt on my hands and knees, on my butt, pulling out all kinds of weeds. Lisa's working really hard, and other people in our group had done the same things. They circled us in and out of these different places to work. To work. And so that so the one who was in the bobcat, that was Irina. She's one of the workers at the Cross, the members at the Cross, and she said, "Can you teach me?" And he said, "Sure, hop on." So I got some photos. I actually have a video of her I sent her as well. And one of the other ladies is a friend of Irina's who just showed up, and we were really glad to see her as well. It was really great to work with that group and to see. We went and had lunch at their building, which was just a little 1950s house, and it still had the green refrigerator and sink and bathtub, and but it was like a house that they are moving to a different building to have their one of their own buildings. Right now they're renting, so they're moving to one of their own buildings, so they don't need to pay rent. But the building worked. It was great. It was a couple, half an hour of air conditioning after being out in the sun, not much shade at that orchard. But and it's just amazing the difference that it can make in a community to have something beautiful there as opposed to houses falling down. Okay. I think that was it for me. Oh, yeah. Now it's on.
Well, I get to share about something yummy and delicious. Rita's ice cream, Italian ice and soft custard. They are famous for their gelatis, not gelato, gelatis. And it's soft serve, Italian ice, and soft serve. And they have these funky flavors of both. Like some of their ice cream flavors are butter pecan and pistachio and cheesecake, as well as vanilla and chocolate. And the same with the Italian ice. I think Sam had Swedish fish once. They have mango and funky fruits, as well as your standards. And it's just a great place. We know about it from Pennsylvania. It's a tradition in our family when we travel there to stop at least once, if not twice, and sometimes 3 times. Just depends how long we are traveling. So Ron and I were like, if there's a Rita's in Erie, we have got to take the group. Well, God is good, and guess what? There was one right in downtown Erie. So our last evening there, we went and treated everybody. And you can see in the photo, there's Adam, the pastoral intern from the Cross, and Marty. This Rita's had a sit down. Most of them are just you walk up and you get your stuff and then you have to sit outside or go somewhere else. But this had a little dining room, and Barry and Anne Marie. And I don't know why Anne Marie did not get a gelati. She got, I think, a sundae, and I was quite offended. No, I'm just kidding. But if you ever find a Rita's, you've got to stop and get a gelati. And actually, Diane did some investigating. There's one in Walpole, I believe. So we may be taking a road trip. So stay tuned.
None of the other groups had ever had a Rita's at all or had ever been to a Rita's, so we thought we would treat them. And then this was in July. Lisa and I were on vacation in Pennsylvania in August, and we stopped at a Rita's, and we took it may have been my first selfie ever. I'm not a selfie person. But we had to take a selfie and send it to everybody saying, wish you were here.
Oh, I guess I'm doing round one. Somehow I missed that. Oh, well, after Rita's, we went to this really cool arcade place. I've never been to one this big. I guess it's like a Dave & Buster's or whatever they're called. So we went there, and some people did arcades, and some of us did bowling. And the bowling was cool because the lights went off, and then they had these cool lights. And we just had a blast, having fun, being silly, just enjoying one another. And I felt like on that event, we, again, were able to really connect with one another and with members of the Cross who came, because it was just a social outing as we gathered. But that was just a really fun evening, and I know our teens would enjoy that, and that's a standard on these trips as well.
And yeah, and another thing that we also do, or that they do on these trips, usually in the evenings, is they go to a AA baseball game. It's really cool. There's a stadium in like downtown Erie, the Erie Seawolves. They're the AA, they're a minor league team for the Detroit Tigers. And it was a really good time just to like kind of sit and relax, and it's pretty fun. They get into it when they score like a run. Like there's this pretty awesome music that plays, and everyone starts pumping their fist up like this. We were told by Adam that the teens really get into it when they're there, and it's a really good time. And Donnie, who we showed earlier, is a huge Erie Seawolves fan. He's a huge, huge fan, and that's an understatement. He really loves it, and so he's really passionate about it, which kind of gets you more passionate about it. It was a great time, and like minor league games are really fun. They're pretty quick pace, and it's a really good time. And yeah, and those are just some pictures of the stadium. I think that picture of the mascot is him doing the Macarena, I think. And I did video the mascot doing it. So if you want the video or you want to see what that looks like, come talk to me afterwards. But yeah, so that is kind of the experience that we had in the evening, and also when we did also as well during our work days and the organizations we worked with. But now as we kind of wrap to a close, I'm going to give an opportunity for those who are up here to kind of share a thought or two about the experience they had, something maybe personal if you'd like. And if you have something you'd like to share with everyone as we're closing, just kind of raise your hand while kind of like calling you, and we'll get a mic to you. Oh, Diane.
I'd never been on a missions trip, and I said, well, let's give it a whirl. Really didn't sound exciting to me, working, helping somebody, not helping, I'm not always willing to help, but thinking of just doing stuff. I'm going to paint someone's house, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It meant so much. You could feel how much it meant. You knew when you were there that you were making a difference. And then it wasn't just moving heavy furniture or weeding, that you were making. We didn't get to see a whole lot of the people that we were helping, but we did work with these people in the organizations, and they, most of them were strong Christians, God-fearing people, and even if they weren't, they were definitely people who loved to take care of the people who needed the help. So I came away saying, well, nope, I didn't just paint. I made a difference. These people, these things got done, and they're going to help these families or whatever who I don't get to see. But that's okay, because God knows who's going to be in those spots, you know. But, you know, I weeded that thing so that tree could grow, so it will be beautiful, so they can get fruit, so that the community will see what was going on. I moved that furniture so that they could have that. Let me tell you, they were really heavy, too. I'm saying moving tables. I said, oh, we could move tables, right? No, these were heavy-duty office furniture. They were heavy. Yeah, they were more than 60 pounds. I can lift 60 pounds at work. They were more than that, Barry. But it was, anyways, it's not just doing little work. It's making an impact.
Yeah, this is I've only been on one missions trip before with Pam to Peru about 20 years ago. And this is the first one of them that was kind of what we call an urban missions trip. You kind of do in the United States and usually in impoverished areas. And one thing that struck me is that, you know, we just get so busy with our lives. We really don't think a lot about those in need. And this was, and I got some great, having to drive with Marty 9 hours up and back, 550 miles. We had a lot of great conversations about how, okay, that's great. We can do that 500 miles away, but what about just in our own backyard? I mean, we have needs here. And so that, and speaking with Chuck and his team at the Cross, it was a real blessing to see a lot of young people, people in their 20s, taking time off from work, you know, to kind of serve with us. And in some cases, you know, drive us around and so forth to get us there. I want to encourage anybody in the congregation, especially the younger people, teenagers, 20s and so forth, to really, this will kind of broaden your horizons. There's a real paradigm shift to think outside the box. And it's very important that we do that. And if you know, if your parents don't feel comfortable with the kids, go with them. You know, we need adults too. There was one guy in the trip that was, he was in his 70s. He was a retired carpenter. And he was, I thought of John Santoro, you might enjoy this. But these, you know, the retired people were doing it too. This guy just said, hey, I got nothing else to do. What do you got? Got my toolbox here, let's go, you know. And I really like that spirit. And they see a need, and it helps us to think more creatively, what can we do here in Massachusetts, in Boston, or Lowell, or wherever, right around us. So I just want to encourage anybody, you know, and I know we'll talk about this in a second, to get involved with the mission trip, even if you just do it once and you never do it again, just to see for yourself. And you kind of, you know, it's great to go on vacation, go to Maine or Vermont and California and Hawaii. All those places are great. You could do that. But I really encourage people, you know, in your vacation time, just to set aside just a week, just to kind of to see how God can work in your life. Thanks.
Yeah, this was my first mission trip, and just want to say that it was a pleasure to serve with everyone on this team. We all took time out of our busy schedules to give back a small portion of what God has given us. When you think about it, even in the church, Pastor Ron says we can't change the world, but we could change one life. And we you know, like Diane and I, we support a kid in Ghana. Been doing that for several years now. And that's one person monthly. On this trip, we probably touched 50 people. So that really made a difference. When you think about what you could do in a week or what you could do in a year, and then it's amazing. It's 10, 15 times, 10, 15 fold what you could do from your normal time at home versus doing something like this. And like Tom was saying, when we were talking, even if we could do something like this 3 or 4 times a year at the church, quarterly, something like that, that's that opportunity for us to do one day and go down and touch 10, 20 lives and make a difference. It's awesome.
One of the most interesting things about all this is, well, like Pastor said, I met Charlie down there, and yeah, we just hit it off. The odds of 2 military men who are both on the spectrum finding each other is like, I don't even want to do the math on that, but it's slim. But one of the things you learn in doing all this, and even with the socializing with each other after is that all of us, to some degree, are a lot less different than we think. You know, really, you take a look at the struggles some of these folks are having, and you start to think it was really God's hand in blessing that we're not sharing the same struggle, that we're not right there with them. So you start to see that these are human beings, and it was good that we could make an effort so they could live like human beings. And you know, it's also getting to be shoulder to shoulder with pastor, and then sometimes when you're working with pastor, you think he's the pastor, he's elevated above us, but no, he's worked right alongside us and helped me and Marty protect the universe. But but it was good. Yeah.
You go for it, Lisa.
A couple weeks ago, I was at Marion Halpin's funeral, and her daughter read her journals from her mission trip. When she was, I guess, in her 60s, I think, she went on her first trip. And she said, I didn't know if I could do it. And I thought, I can relate. I'm like, will I be able to do it? In fact, when this mission trip got delayed because of COVID, I kind of went, phew, you know. But I'm like, I knew God wanted me to go. And it's amazing how God just gives you what you need. And everyone was so supportive. There were times we all ran out of steam. We needed a break, and we took it. And other people picked up the slack. And then you were the one picking up the slack. But it's such a great opportunity, and I can't encourage you enough, again, to step out. Parents with your youth would be such a cool time, whether you have children or not. But it's just amazing what God does through these experiences. And then the important thing I think that we probably all took away, or one of the most important, I should say, is that what are we going to do here? We have some things going on, but how are we going to do those things and keep them going? Because if we just go on a trip and that's all we do, I don't think that's God's plan. I think his plan is, okay, bring it back with you. So things like bringing food in for the food pantry. I wish that cart was filled to overflowing every single week. Serving at the PCC. We're looking at other organizations to sponsor, just helping around church, serving in our church. All those things were things that really touched my heart in particular.
Thank you for sharing. Is there anyone else who would like to share? Pastor Ron.
Yeah, to me, a big thing was seeing the young adults of that church. These 20-somethings, early 30s. And the commitment they had, first to God, and secondly, to the ministry of the church, to be serving. And it's something we all need to be doing, figure out what are our gifts and how can we be serving in the ministry somehow. And these young adults were full tilt, just completely dedicated to the Lord, which was powerful to see.
Again, thank you all for sharing. And a lot of what was already shared definitely was very impactful to me as well. And just one thing that sticks out to me every time I've had the chance to go on a mission experience. And I thank God that I've had the opportunity to go on a few of these in my life. It's actually really first where I ultimately became a follower of Jesus, was on a mission experience like this when I was a senior in high school. Is I think a lot of times we go and we're thinking, oh, I'm going to serve these people and I'm going to make this really big impact. And there is that impact. But something that I'm always very humbled by is how, like, what God is trying to show me. It's a really incredible way to recenter. And honestly, before going on this trip, there was a lot of struggles that I was going through personally, a little bit of self-doubt about my job, how I'm doing as a youth pastor and everything else. But I had a really powerful conversation with Patty. And even just the experience I had just to see what it truly means to minister to others, it really recentered what it's really all about. And so, again, I can't promise that like there'll be like something like that, but who knows? Like God can work in really incredible ways. And I think one of the ways he can work is in ways we least expect it. And so just something to consider. There's already been a lot of like encouragement. Hey, like consider this trip. And so I just really encourage you to be in prayer about it. If almost like if you're like, oh, absolutely no, or oh yeah, absolutely yes. Like I encourage you to just be like in prayer about, hey God, like is this something you'd want me to go on? If it's a little bit uncomfortable, like honestly, these trips aren't always comfortable. Sometimes they're trying to like kind of push us out of our comfort zone a little bit. And so as you see on the slide behind me now, next Sunday at 11 a.m., the Teachers Lounge, we're going to have an information meeting about this trip next summer. And we would love for you to consider coming and just hearing more information about it, like the date and other logistical things. So there's a sign-up sheet in the back, in the lobby back there. And so now I'm going to close our time of this presentation in prayer, and then we'll have our closing song, which is We Believe. So I will pray. Lord Jesus, I just want to say thank you for this time that we've gotten to share just our and how you've moved during this time when we were there, and how you're still moving in our lives today. And Lord, I just pray that we will be open if this is an experience that you want us to partake in next year, Lord, that you draw the people that you'd want to be there, Lord. You can teach us in incredible ways, and Father, when we become your hands and feet, you shape us to be more like you. And we're so thankful for that. And we're so thankful for your son, Jesus, in the way he came to serve and love us. And Lord, I just pray as your people, we will grow in that as well. And God, again, thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for everyone who's here as well, Lord. We love you, and in Jesus' name, amen.